Welcome all to BFantasyFootball podcast. I'm your host Derek, and this is my brother and my co-host Marcel. Today we are going over our top pickups at each position for Week 4 and what we may have learned from Week 3 from the NFL. So, Marce, what do you want to go over for the injury news?
Yeah, so another bad weekend in the injury department. So I'm just going to list off some injuries and what I expect for timelines and everything else. So to start, running back Tyreek Cohen with the Chicago Bears, torn ACL, out for the season. This gives a bump up to David Montgomery. The three superstars in Julio, Devontae Adams, and Michael Thomas, I do expect them all back this week, but obviously monitor those situations with a close eye. And then I do also expect Chark to be back. Wide receiver Deontay Johnson, concussion protocol. Week 4 is questionable for him. Christian Kirk, groin injury, doubtful for Week 4. Jared Cook, groin injury. Don't really have too many updates or news on, but didn't come back to the game, so questionable/doubtful for Week 4. Also, their rookie there, Troutman at tight end, looked good in the small role he played in the end of that game. Tight end Dallas Goedert, small ankle fracture. So for a little break in the ankle, usually most bone breaks is 4 weeks minimum. They place him on IR, so the 4 weeks seems like a good timeline for a minimum. I would go up to 6, if not 7 weeks max. He's a bigger body, so it could take a little more time. So yeah, get ready for that. Wide receiver Deshaun Jackson, hamstring injury, not believed to be too serious. Lists him as questionable. Again, monitor that. Another wide receiver on the Philly Eagles that got hurt. So that core is looking bad. Chris Carson, running back with Seattle, first-degree knee sprain. So usually with first-degree sprains, we're looking at missing 1 week, I would say almost for sure, just letting that ligament heal up again and go through its processes of healing. But this, usually 1 to 2 weeks, 3 at worst. It's noted that they have a bye week in week 6, so maybe they sit him for weeks 4 and 5 and wait for him to return after the bye week, get fully healthy. But we are talking Pete Carroll, who, if the guy's healthy or deemed healthy by the athletic staff, he's gonna put him out there and roll with him. So keep that situation monitored. But yeah, I'm definitely saying he should be out this week. But again, tough guy, and Pete Carroll, the coach there. Kicker Younghoe Koo suffered a groin injury and will miss some time. I have him projected for 2 to 6 weeks. Groin injuries are tough to deal with, especially as a kicker. So again, sucks that I think he's the 3rd or 4th kicker on the season, depending on your scoring. So that's a big loss, especially when you don't really draft for the kickers and then you end up with a really good one in your team and have to lose them and go pick someone up that could be mediocre, not as consistent. So it sucks for those owners. Russell Gage, concussion protocol, questionable for Week 4. Chris Godwin, hamstring, expected 2 to 4 week absence. I think they're really going to let him get healthy on this one, especially with the schedule coming up. We'll see if they're able to win some games and then prolong his healing. Jerick McKinnon, bruised ribs. This is a pain tolerance thing. So we'll see if he decides to play or not. This is more on him. They can always give him an injection before the game, kind of that Tyrod Taylor injection. So hopefully there's no punctured lungs there. Jordan Reed, knee injury, out 6 to 8 weeks, and I wouldn't be surprised if this is for the season, as he did also roll his ankle there, so rehab's going to be hampered. Wide receivers with Oakland Raiders, Bryan Edwards and Henry Ruggs, so both these rookies, I expect them both out this weekend, which is very unfortunate. Wide receiver Michael Pittman Jr., compartment syndrome surgery he had today or yesterday. So compartment syndrome is you have a bunch of different compartments of muscles in your shin, and up and around and behind your shin. What happens is in between these compartments, they are compressed so tightly together that inflammation begins and they're swelling and it becomes very painful, and they literally have to cut open your muscles and it's very painful, and it does take time to heal. So 6 to 8 weeks for sure, if not longer. So it just depends on his healing status and how well he can recover from that. And last one here is wide receiver John Brown, calf injury. There's a soft tissue injury. So as his past, he has sickle cell, which is a condition, again, as I mentioned on one of our last podcasts, to do with anemia and low oxygen to bind in his blood. Anyway, he's expected to miss one. I expect him to miss 1 week, but monitor closely because I wouldn't be like. There's a chance he plays. It just there's no reports yet on how severe that calf injury is. He didn't return, so we'll wait and see. So I'll pass it on to Derek for other news.
Yeah, in other news, quarterback Jeff Driscoll has been benched for second-year quarterback Brett Ripon. Not sure if you'd want to start him anyways. I mean, it is against the Jets, but I mean, I just wouldn't touch the whole situation. Eagles have signed Hakeem Butler and are converting him to a tight end. So this is something to keep an eye out for Dynasty. Titans and Steelers, that game could be moved to Monday, so keep an eye out for that. That is likely because of the COVID-related news. I'm not sure if you heard, a few players have been tested positive. Dwayne Haskins is on a short leash now, especially with his performance over the last few weeks. And Adam Gase and Dan Quinn, their jobs are in jeopardy. So we'll see what happens there. I wouldn't be surprised to see Adam Gase fired by Friday morning.
Yeah, and if you don't mind me just butting in here for the Hakeem Butler converting to tight end and how it relies to Dynasty news, it's Zach Ertz's contract expires this season. They're a team who have shown to go with the 2 tight end sets year in and year out. Hakeem Butler fits almost the exact same athletic profile as Darren Waller. So just take that into account. Darren Waller was also a big-bodied, fast, athletic wide receiver that was converted to a tight end. Hakeem Butler, I'm not saying he's the next Darren Waller, but I'm saying if you have a spot on your bench in a dynasty league, you need tight end. I'm saying you can take a flyer on this guy. You never know what will happen. He didn't work out with Arizona because they wanted to go pure speed and quickness, and he might not be the quickest player, but top-end speed, he has it. And, I mean, the guy's 6'5", so he's a big body. And you know what Carson Wentz likes to do with those big body tight ends, target. So definitely interesting, but he could also be just out there for pass block and not even catch a target. So we're going to see.
Yep. So looking now at the waiver wire, we're going to start the quarterbacks. So for me, the quarterbacks are Gardner Minshew is my top pickup. He's 56% owned. He's playing the Bengals this week, and that seemed to be a get-right game. Even for Carson Wentz, it was probably one of his better games of the year, despite how terrible he is this year. Looking next at Ryan Fitzpatrick, he's playing against Seattle, which is also another team that just loves to give all kinds of points to the wide receiver and quarterbacks. So start all your players that are against Seattle. Joe Burrow is my next one. He's 53% owned, and he's playing the Jaguars. So he's someone to keep monitoring. He's getting better and better in his rookie debut. And then we have Jared Goff. He did pretty darn well last week, and he's going to be playing against the Giants. And he's only 37% owned, so he's another one I'd pick up for sure. Do you have any other differences there, Mars?
Yeah, the only streaming quarterback I'd go with is Kirk Cousins, and this could also become a long-term value with Kirk Cousins. I know he's been off to kind of a weaker start this season, and especially week 2 against Indianapolis. That kind of hurts his season averages, where he was actually negative 1.5 in certain leagues. So I just want to talk on this because there seemed to be a mindset shift at halftime in that game where they just decided, hey, we're no longer a possessional team. We can't control the clock just by the run game. We're going to let Kirk Cousins see what happens if he airs it out a little more. He had his most passing attempts on the season, 27 compared to 26 and 25. I know that's not a huge difference, but it was coming out in the second half where he had most of them, and it actually seemed to work. Justin Jefferson had his breakout, as we're going to talk about later, and Thielen had another mediocre floor game, which maybe Justin Jefferson will take off some attention from Thielen, open it up to have a 1A, well, more of a 1 and a 2 there. I wouldn't go 1A, 1B, which could also help Delvin Cook in the run game too. So this could be a higher quality offense if they do let Kirk Cousins throw the ball more. So if you are struggling at quarterback, especially in the deeper leagues, and need to take a flyer on someone, hey, maybe I can have him rest the season, Kirk Cousins might be that guy. Because over his career, he's proven, if I just come here in the last, since 2015, 10th, 5th, 6th, 13th, and last year he finished 19th but missed a game, so he could have probably finished around the 15th mark. And he's very efficient and always has a high floor, so yeah, I look definitely into that.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, that's the thing is, Vikings were doing terrible at the start of the season, but usually good teams with good coaching staff typically bounce back and typically have better games. So that's likely what we're seeing here is the resurgence of from that coaching staff. So now looking at the running backs, I got Darrell Henderson as my first. Now most leagues won't have him free, but in 67.9% rostered, so that gives you, 33% of you guys out there could probably still pick him up. Likely those are the 8 and 10 team leagues. He's against the Giants, so that's another reason it's nice to pick him up. My next one is Myles Gaskin. He's 45.8% owned, so half of you guys will be able to pick him up. He's against Seattle. Jeff Wilson Jr., he's a couple week starter in my opinion. He's against the Eagles, especially with Jerick McKinnon is being questionable, and then Raheem Mostert. We still don't know if he's coming back. He likely is, but we don't know. And Tevin Coleman's not. So the next one is Carlos Hyde with Chris Carson being possibly out for a week or two. So this guy, that's why you'd want to pick up Carlos Hyde to try to get that spot start. That is someone that you would likely be able to use a week, maybe 2 max, and then probably have to drop after that. But he is against the Dolphins. Brian Hill, he's someone that's starting to take over a little bit for Gurley. And so you have to keep that in mind, as he's not going to be probably someone you even want to start next week, but someone that you could stash on your bench, and then maybe in like 3 weeks' time, you have an RB2 flex starter that's a solid starter. And then we have Rex Burkhead. I mean, if you try to chase that Patriots backfield, good luck for you. But I can understand why you'd pick him up and just start him to see if he can perform what he did last week. See anything there, Mars?
My number one on the week for running backs is Myles Gaskin, and this because it appears to be a long-term hold on the situation. Now, Miami, over the last couple seasons, haven't run the ball a whole lot, but he had 22 carries in this game. They absolutely faded Matt Breida out, and he picked up the slack there, and he also picked up some of Jordan Howard's carries. I believe they like to have him on the field more, as he's a great pass catcher. I mean, so far he's dropped 2 targets on the season. So 1 target on the season, so he's been very good there, 15 for 16. So yeah, they like to have him on the field as a gadget player. You can use him in multiple different situations. So yeah, he's going to be a long-term flex. So I like that. Where Darrell Henderson, he's my number 2 on the week, and that's just because probably, like we said, most leagues he's owned, and Cam Akers is coming back. The hot hand approach that they're talking about there with the LA Rams. So I just have Myles Gaskin slightly above because I feel like he's got a secure hand on that role. And then I want to add in deeper leagues, if you need a stash, if you're hurting at RB, Damian Harris, he might be returning this week, if not the week after. They bragged him up in training camp, and he was the second round pick. He comes from a good school, so there's chances he's really good. So yeah, he could definitely be a good player down the season.
Yep, no, for sure. Just to keep in mind, high-end handcuffs that might still be out there, like Latavius Murray, Pollard, Madison, Edmonds, and Darrell Williams as well. Snell is starting to be a little more questionable, especially with Anthony McFarland starting a little bit. But, I mean, they're a good player that if you have a spare room on your bench, just chuck one on. Maybe you get lucky that one of those starters go down. Lucky for you, not lucky for the starter, of course. And yeah, for Myles Gaskin, I just worry that Jordan Howard keeps stealing the goal line, and then yeah, that's it kind of caps him a little bit. But yeah, that's all I can see for the running backs.
Yeah, no, fair for sure. Moving into the wide receivers on the week for the waiver wire, I'm looking at Justin Jefferson as my number one. This is NFL had him projected to be the top fantasy rookie producing wide receiver just because there's the opportunity there. He played his highest percentage of snaps on the season at 78%. He had 9 targets, which triples both games. 7 receptions, 175 yards, and 1 touchdown. Now, we don't expect this to be an every week thing, but I definitely see him having a high enough floor that he can be a flex player week in and week out. He's got Houston next week, Seattle the week after, and Atlanta the week after, all smash plays for the wide receiver position, so he could be very good in those games. Moving on to my number 2 is Allen Lazard, just in case he's still unowned in your league. When I checked this morning, I think it was at 47%. So, okay, 39 is highlighted here in our doc, so that's a guy you have to add. He's going to be a flex play week in and week out, and if Devontae Adams misses another game, or he's usually hampered in most seasons, he could miss another game down the stretch, Allen Lazard becomes a startable player, as we saw this weekend. Brandon Ayuk is my number 3, and to me this is more of a short-term flex play, as I think he will be he's the wide receiver 1 there till Deebo Samuel returns. They use him in the same role Deebo was in last year, so it's not guaranteed that he's going to be great once Deebo returns. That's why I have him as a short-term flex, but could give you points in that role. Next, I have Anthony Miller. Just the way the Bears were able to move the ball when Nick Foles took over the QB role this week. So I have him as a long-term flex, but I feel like this is more when bye weeks come around. I'm not banking on Anthony Miller unless you're in a deeper league or really, really, really hurting at wide receiver. Preston Williams, same thing, 53% owned, long-term flex. You can throw him in your flex if you need him there. Especially this week, I believe they have Seattle, so that's a great matchup for him. Next is T. Higgins. This is an interesting one. I have him as a deep flex for the moment, but I think that's his floor in deeper leagues. But it kind of looked like he started to take over AJ Green's role there. So that's something to watch. Tyler Boyd, as me and Derek have been harping for the first 3 weeks, he's taken over that wide receiver 1 spot. Now T. Higgins and AJ Green are 2A and 2B. Who comes out of that, we'll have to wait and see. I'm scared for Drew Sample now. It looked like T. Higgins, the return of him and everything, might have took stuff away from Drew Sample. So I'd like to see another week just to see how that plays out. But for now, if you have a spot on the end of your bench, add T. Higgins, because his absolute ceiling on the season is a wide receiver 2. So keep an eye there. Greg Ward, this is my next wide receiver, and this is strictly volume play. I have him as a short-term flex. He had, I want to say, somewhere between 10 and 13 targets this week. And with Deshaun Jackson being questionable, Rager being out, Jeffrey not necessarily playing this week, Goddard out. I mean, Carson Wentz will throw the ball to somewhere. That's why I have Greg Ward in there. But as I said, short-term flex. Alshon Jeffrey comes up as my next wide receiver. This is just stash play, hoping once he comes back, he can get back to what he averaged last season. Last season, he was wide receiver 17 on a points per game basis when he finished the game and was healthy during the game. I know that's another factor you got to take into account, but you can stash him, see if he's able to get right, get healthy, and play the season. Next, I have a PPR flex in Cole Beasley. This is on the back of John Brown. Depends what happens with that injury. If John Brown is there, you can still play Cole Beasley, but that's more in a deep league. If John Brown's out, Cole Beasley in half-point or full-point PPR is a flex play. I have Laviska Shenault as a deep flex. That's all I'm going to say about him. And I also have Scotty Miller, owned in 12% of leagues. He could be... He's creeping up in my waiver rankings. We're going to see what I finish with tonight. I'll be posting those later on. But as of now, he's more on the end of my list till I decide what I'm going to do here. I guess, yeah, with Godwin out, and Justin Watson's hurt. So Scotty Miller, yeah, he's going up my board. I mean, he's going to be a top 4 pickup on the week for me now for wide receivers. And that's all I have for wide receiver. So, Derek, I'll pass it on to you.
Yeah, my few other points is, I'm not sure how much Corey Davis is owned, but we don't know when A.J. Brown is coming back, and he still seems to be performing decently well. So if you need someone just for even a week or two, maybe he's going to be a decent flex starter for you, but it's no one you're going to really bank on for the whole season, unlike some of these other names. When it comes to the Bills wide receiver, I actually wouldn't mind actually having Gabriel Davis more for the high upside because he was playing well in that role, trying to fill in for John Brown, and he actually did it quite well. And another person I would consider is Hunter Renfrow from the Las Vegas Raiders. That's just because there's not many people left. I mean, other than him and Waller and Jacobs, I mean, that team is quite decimated. Yes, you have Aguilar and Zay Jones, Zay Jones.
Yeah, Zay Jones.
You don't want to touch those two. I mean, those are just really deep shots where at least Hunter Renfrow has really good chemistry with Derek Carr, and he seems to love to target him. So he just never goes away. When it comes to T. Higgins, it does seem like that torch might have been passed by A.J. Green. We'll see if that stays that way. But, A.J. Green's starting to look his age. Tim Patrick, someone I do want you guys to remember. He was passed a lot to, and he played the slot. So he did get a good game last week, and they're playing against the Jets. So if you need a quick spot starter for Thursday night, that's who I'd throw in there. That is everything else. I have to agree with you, Mars. Anthony Miller, someone to consider, like you said. It's just we got to see what Foles does. I mean, Foles looked better than Trubisky, but he didn't look like a hot shot either. He had a lot of lucky throws that actually did not get picked off, so that is something to consider. Mike Williams, he got 37% of Herbert's target shares over the last couple weeks, so that is something to keep an eye on. He is banged up, so we'll have to see. But, I mean, if he keeps getting that between him and Keenan Allen, I mean, you have to respect it. I mean, Mike Williams likes to go get those deep shots and gets you points all of a sudden, so he's someone that you could start, and it could be a boom-bust start most times. He only had one target this week. That might have been because he was banged up, though. He could have been just after a while, he might have been just playing more as a decoy. And that's why I do temper my expectations on Mike Williams, is just because he is banged up. But he's someone to keep an eye out for and listen to his injury news. Keelan Cole would be the last one I want to mention. He's playing against the Bengals, and with DJ Chark back, taking away that top coverage, he could start to see a better game than last week, because some people expected a lot from when DJ Chark was out, but it ended up being terrible. But do remember, I think their center might still be out. No, I think his center's coming back, so the center will be back hopefully for Gardner Minshew to give him more time to be able to protect him and be able to take those shots.
Yeah. I didn't realize Keelan Cole is only owned in 27% of leagues, so he would have definitely been like almost top of my chart, just because with Chart coming back, the weak secondary that the Cincinnati Bengals have, like, he's a flex play this week.
Yeah, exactly. He surprised me as well.
Yeah, so that's all for the wide receivers. For the tight ends, I have, obviously, if you haven't grabbed Dalton Schultz yet, he's still a good tight end to plug and play. And to me, Mo Alley-Cox, he got all the targets at tight end this week from the Indianapolis Colts, so I'm high on him, and he caught his first touchdown on the season. He's a huge guy. We call him Big Mac. Don't forget it. And with Michael Pittman Jr. out and Paris Campbell out, I'm looking at this guy. He's a great pass catcher. T.Y. Hilton hasn't been proven that he's anything of the past, and Zach Pascal is just missed, so Big Mac.
Yep. The only one I'm looking at is also Jordan Akins. I mean, he's still doing pretty well out there. I mean, he's got a pretty low floor, but we expect the Texans to start to bounce back more and more as the season goes on, because they had a rough start of the season considering who they faced. So with that, hopefully against the Vikings this week, he starts to have a better game. If he can get a touchdown, I mean, you're never going to complain with that. Jimmy Graham's another one to keep an eye out for with Foles back. He loves tight ends and he loves the slot. And if Foles can do his magic like he seems to do, Jimmy Graham might be worth it. Old man Graham might be worth starting. So if you're really desperate at tight end, I would throw him on your roster and start him. When it comes to defense and streaming, Rams are only 21% owned, and they're against the Giants. I mean, you're crazy if you don't pick them up and play them, because, I mean, that just seems too easy. The Saints I also considered. They're against the Lions. It does worry me a little bit, but it is someone I had considered. I actually like the Broncos versus the Jets probably more. And I also like the Jets versus the Broncos. This just seems like it's going to be a terrible Thursday night game to watch, especially with the Broncos putting another quarterback in there that hasn't played with the team that much, like getting reps. And then Jets, I mean, they just look like they're a garbage fire. So, yeah, either way, I think either defense can do all right and get you some points. And the Seahawks, I also don't mind them against the Dolphins just because if Fitzmagic does become, loses his magic all of a sudden, that's a lot of times they can pick him because, Russell Wilson's going to score those touchdowns. So Fitzmagic trying to copy that might end up with quite a few picks. Yeah, so that's all I have for the defense. What about you, Mars?
Yeah, no, I'm just high on the Rams. Seahawks against Dolphins, I still don't know because as we've seen yet, the Seahawks defense hasn't stopped nobody. It's just the offense has won the games. But they also played Atlanta, the Pats, and Dallas. So they've played 3 good offenses. So maybe like a mediocre to poor. Well, I'm going to keep the Dolphins in mediocre offense. We'll see what that defense can do against them. And yeah, I'd play the Broncos against the Jets against the Broncos, just because it's going to be a low over-under. And both teams are going to say, hey, if we can score in the last drive, we're going to win this game because it's going to be 10-10 by the time the last drive happens. Unless this game surprises us and both teams can't guard the other team and they just both go off. But I expect more of the right now the line's at 40 and I still expect the under, so we'll see there. Now we're moving into the drop candidates. I don't know where Derek is on all these. Robert Gronkowski, I know he finally had the targets, 7 targets, 5 catches, led the team, but I'm still dropping Rob Gronkowski. I think their other tight ends are safer plays. Deshaun Jackson, I'm still holding on to him. See what happens this week in Philly. Sterling Shepard, injured IR. Team's not looking good. The O-line's not looking good. Daniel Jones, turnover prone. I'm dropping him. Matt Breida, his name shouldn't even be in a conversation. Get him out of here. Jarvis Landry, highly owned, really skilled player on a good offense. He's the second target on that offense. You can hold him if you want. That's up to you, honestly. Derek, do you have any different takes on that?
Yeah, when it comes to Jarvis Landry, I mean, we know he's more of he needs the targets, right? And he's not getting them that much this year, and I can just see that's gonna how it's gonna stay, and that's why I would probably drop him if you can get someone like Justin Jefferson or something like that. I wouldn't just drop him for Braxton Berrios or nothing like that, but I mean I would drop him for a high end waiver wire pickup, not just a middling one. And yeah, I don't know if you said Henry Ruggs. I'm just worried about the injury could linger a while. And yes, he's seen a lot of the air targets for the Raiders. I think it was like 67% of it. But I mean, with that injury, it could slow down his speed, and we just don't know when he comes back, how long he's going to be out, and when he comes back, if he's going to be to full speed, because he is a rookie as well, which rookies fighting back from injuries tend to have a hard time because you can't expect everything from them. They're still trying to learn everything else about the NFL, let alone having an injury on top of that. So that's the only reason I'm concerned about that. So now we're going to go into our next part. One man's trash is another man's treasure, and that's just search on the Wednesday mornings who got dropped and who you could pick up from those people that got dropped. So I still look at Nyheim Hines. I could see him being dropped this week, and he's someone I would want to pick up. DeAndre Swift, if he's dropped, pick him up because he is someone I want to hold on my bench. I feel like he could be like, what's that Eagles? Miles Sanders was a couple last year where, yeah, he didn't do much most of the year, and then all of a sudden everything opened up for him, and he actually became really well. Texans players, they had a really hard start of the season, so I could see maybe one or two of them being dropped, included even the tight end, and then that would be someone I'd pick up because their schedule does open up and becomes a lot easier than what it was. What about you, Mers?
No, that's the extent of the players that I can easily see being dropped at this point. There's no more that come off the top of my head, but if something happens that you feel a good player is dropped and you feel that player has good potential, I mean, go out and get him. Yeah, I can't think of any more, honestly. Yeah, and then the next segment is people to trade for and people to trade away. This is capitalizing on value. So first I'm going to get on trading away. So when we say capitalizing on value, right now Darrell Henderson's name has a lot of value, has had 2 good back-to-back weeks, but Cam Akers is coming back, and this is a hot hand approach in this offense. So he might not be super consistent. So when we're trying to trade away Darrell Henderson, we want to get the high value of his 2 weeks. So people we look at are guys like Joe Mixon, Kenyon Drake, Antonio Gibson. These are guys we'd trade Darrell Henderson away to go get, even if you have to add your last wide receiver on your bench just to sugar up the deal a bit, you can do that. Sony Michel, if you can get anything better for him, Myles Gaskin for Sony Michel, you're winning. So that's another one to look at. T.Y. Hilton, if you have anyone in your league who's a Colts fan or has played fantasy football for a long time, so to them that T.Y. Hilton name value means something, I would trade him. The rapport between him and Phillip Rivers has seemed off, and not only that, I kind of looked at Phillip Rivers' past history with smaller wide receivers, because Keenan Allen's not small, Mike Williams isn't small. He used to have Tyrell with him. He wasn't small. The tight ends he's had in the past were all pretty big bodies. He doesn't seem to do too well with small wide receivers. So this could be just an issue there alone. So if you can trade away T.Y. Hilton for another wide receiver too, maybe your Deontay Johnson, who just got hurt, has only shown 1 decent game, or your DJ Moore, who hasn't completely broken out yet. So this is just something to take into account. I would, T.Y. Hilton or Will Fuller, Derek?
Oh, Will Fuller.
Will Fuller, that easy? Wow.
Now,
yeah,
Will Fuller is scary for me because he's very boom bust, but I
exactly.
don't think T.Y. Hilton can do anything where Fuller, if he has a couple good games in a row, then you could trade him for something else, right? That's more what I would do with Fuller. It's like you're almost trying to gain your stocks, right? Your fantasy stocks. Yeah, when it comes to T.Y. Hilton, I mean, one thing you're doing when you're trying to trade him away, mention, hey, he's the only man left. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Just brag that up. Hey, look, Pittman's down, Campbell's down. Like, who else is he going to throw to? And then that way they might take that bait and not realize that T.Y. Hilton isn't looking as great this year as years past.
Exactly. Sadly. Yep. And people we would want to trade for, I can let Derek cover this segment.
Yeah, so I'm still targeting Deontay Johnson, especially with that injury. People might be scared off him because he didn't have a great game, but they didn't realize maybe that concussion happened very early in that game, and he's only had really 1 good game. So if you could trade anything decent for him, I think you can get away with that. Christian McCaffrey, I know some people think, oh, you're gonna have to give a lot, but if that team's hurting, you might be able to give, you still have to give them something worth it, someone that's been producing. But if you can get away with that, I mean, Christian McCaffrey, if you have a winning record right now, go try to get that guy from him, because you might turn around your team that, you might have a week or 2 that's bad because you traded away someone you needed right now. But if CMC comes back and becomes the CMC from before, you're going to win your league at the end. You're going to be one sitting with the trophy in your room. DJ Moore, he's had a hard start of the season, so but he still has the targets and everything, and he just hasn't hit that end zone. I'm not sure if he's gotten 1 or 2, but he just hasn't gotten any much for touchdowns. So that's someone that you want to get while they're still getting all the targets. Try to trade anything for him. DJ Chark's another one I would consider. Joe Mixon and Kenyon Drake, they're players that are still getting their 4th and 5th or something like that, I think, in carries. So yeah, they just haven't hit the end zone that much, and so those are people I'm going to want to pick up. Keenan Allen, I mean, if Herbert's still playing, which by the seems of it is for quite a little while yet, unless he starts to really stink for some reason, Herbert loves him, so try to go get him. The problem is Keenan Allen had like 19 targets last week, I believe, so that might be harder to get him. So I can understand if it's harder to get him, and you just got to weigh your cost of what point you're not comfortable with that. Antonio Gibson, keep looking at him. He might be someone that could break out. If you, like I said, or like Marcel said earlier, if you had Darrell Henderson, if you can get Antonio Gibson, that'd be great. Yeah, and just look for owners that are 0-3, 1-2, and if they have injured players like AJ Brown or something like that, go try to get them off their team for someone that is starting and is pretty good quality, and then maybe you can start them and have an all right later season. And then that way they can maybe even get back on foot because they have someone that can start for them right away. You see anyone else you want to talk about, Merce, to trade for?
Yeah, the Christian McCaffrey take is very interesting. If I'm a 2-1 team or 3-0 team, and I have guys like James Robinson, Darrell Henderson, these guys have been doing well up to date, I would definitely offer them for Christian McCaffrey, especially if that owner is 0-3 right now, because chances are they at least have 2 losses if they lost Christian McCaffrey last week. I'm trying to look at the list of other guys who have been performing pretty good that I would trade for Christian McCaffrey. So Darrell Henderson, Myles Gaskin, Melvin Gordon, I'd even consider trading away for him.
Would you do a Nick Chubb?
No, I'm keeping Nick Chubb.
Kareem Hunt?
I'm keeping Kareem Hunt.
Over CMC? Interesting. If I had Kareem Hunt, I'd probably give him away for CMC. Just with that fair. Upside.
My side of that is, what happens if Kareem Hunt doesn't come back for another 5 weeks?
You mean CMC?
Yeah, sorry. If Christian McCaffrey doesn't come back for another 5 weeks, which I expect him to be back in 3, so 2 more off weeks, then you're going to be safe. But if he doesn't come back for 5 weeks, then you're starting to look at your roster and saying, hey, I am now 3-4 or something like this. Or I can go 5-2 if I keep Kareem Hunt and then almost guarantee myself a place in the playoffs. And then with a high ankle sprain, also re-injury risk. So Kareem Hunt to me is high enough on my list that I wouldn't trade him away. Devin Singletary, I would trade away for him. Like I said, James Robinson. Yeah, so that's about the extent. But yeah, I would definitely go after him. Chris Carson, package Chris Carson and Mark Ingram if you have those two.
Might be a little harder with Chris Carson's injury, but if they can be reassured that he's going to be healthy again, that might help. But just the only thing with CMC, I mean, I've heard another podcast with a doctor on it, and they said they were trying to spot the play that had happened, and it was very difficult. They're not even sure, so they don't think it's that bad of an injury. So that's the only reason that I'm a little more hopeful that he might come back after 3 or 4 weeks and actually be all right. So that's one of the things that kind of makes me hopeful. I mean, it is a risk, but it's kind of like you're trying to, go big or go home type thing, right? You don't want to get 3rd place in the league. You want to get 1st place, and he is a potential. Now, don't pay too much for him, but I would pay quite a bit for CMC.
Yeah, and I have one last player. It's a little bit of a long shot, but David Johnson had a good first week. He showed what he could do as the RB1 with this team against Kansas City, who I would say against the run are almost a mid-pack, if not above mid-pack against the run. And he was able to score 19 fantasy points in half-point PPR, almost 20. And then the next 2 weeks, he faced Baltimore, and then he faced Pittsburgh. So his numbers are down, but his worst game is 11 carries. He's had 3 or more targets in every game. This is a team who is just going to start winning games right now. They're 0-3, so your running backs aren't going to have as much attempts. They might have more pass attempts or targets, but they're not going to have as much ground attempts. So next on the schedule, Minnesota should be an even game. If not, they come ahead. which means hopefully more running attempts, longer drives, not as good as of a defense. Jacksonville next, same story. Tennessee kind of goes back to a tougher team to play against. Green Bay tougher. Bye week, then they got Jacksonville again, Cleveland, who he can score on, both of those teams. New England, and then Detroit, Indiana, Chicago, Indianapolis, and then Cincy. So there's a lot of good matchups coming up for David Johnson. So if I'm able to trade a guy like Devin Singletary, who just came off a really good week for him, I'm doing it. If I'm able to trade Darrell Henderson, I think I would do it. So yeah, I like David Johnson going forward, and I'm hoping the owner of him is kind of discouraged after the last 2 weeks and is looking for a bit more what they would appear as upside, where I think David Johnson has more upside. So that's the last player I'd go out and grab.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. Anything else?
No, that's all I have for today.
Well, that wraps up the podcast. Please don't forget to click that like button and subscribe on YouTube. Also follow us on Twitter at BoudreauxBrosFF and our personal handles at Marcel_BFF and at Derek_BFF. And please don't hesitate to reach out to us and ask us any questions about our rankings, start, sit, trades, anything like that. Anyways, have a great day and see you next time. Thanks.
See you all.